The following is a video call recorded on Friday, December 16th by the United Religions Initiative, hosted by the Regional Coordinator of North America, Sari Heidenreich, Regional Coordinator of the Multiregion, Freddie Helmiere, and Coordinator of the Environmental Resource Cooperation Circle, Katherine Hreib. The call is an opportunity for members of the URI delegation to Standing Rock for the Interfaith Day of Prayer on December 4th, 2016, to share stories of our time there and to hear from Global Council Trustee Audri Scott-Williams about some of the long-standing work with indigenous communities within the URI Network. We end the call with a series of questions that will hopefully inspire reflection on how we can be allies to the indigenous community within and beyond the URI Network. The call begins with a reading of the United Religions Initiative's Preamble, Purpose, and Principles.
We, people of diverse religions, spiritual expressions, and indigenous traditions throughout the world, hereby establish the United Religions Initiative to promote enduring, daily interfaith cooperation, to end religiously motivated violence, and to create cultures of peace, justice, and healing for the earth and all living beings.
We respect the uniqueness of each tradition and differences of practice or belief.
We value voices that respect others and believe that sharing our values and wisdom can lead us to act for the good of all.
We believe that our religious, spiritual lives, rather than dividing us, guide us to build community and respect for one another.
Therefore, as interdependent people rooted in our traditions, we now unite for the benefit of our Earth community.
We unite to build cultures of peace and justice.
We unite to heal and protect the Earth.
We unite to build safe places for conflict resolution and reconciliation.
We unite to support freedom of religion and spiritual expression and the rights of all individuals and peoples as set forth in international law.
We unite in responsible cooperative action to bring the wisdom and values of our religions, spiritual expressions, and indigenous traditions to bear on the economic, environmental, political, and social challenges facing our Earth community.
We unite to provide a global opportunity for participation by all people, especially by those whose voices are not often heard.
We unite to support freedom of religion and spiritual expressions and the rights of all individuals and peoples to set forth in international law.
We unite to celebrate the joy of blessings and the light of wisdom in both movement and stillness.
We unite to use our combined resources only in non-compassionate action to awaken to our deepest truths and to manifest love and justice among all life in our Earth community.
Thank you, Artie and Ahawan. If we can just take a deep breath together and let that sink in. And now we're honored to have with us Maimoni Yusuf, who is a Choctaw and Cherokee and also a performing artist. And she is going to share with us a Lakota song and an indigenous blessing to start our time here. Maimona, are you there?
So this song that we chose to open up with, it is a Lakota song from the Lakota Sioux people, and it's called Inkpata, and it is a song that's used as a love song now. It tells the story of women who travel to the edge of a cliff to wave their shawls to wait for their husbands to come home from the American Indian Wars, and as the men come home, the women, they meet with their husbands and they leave. And there's one woman whose husband never comes home, and she waves her shawl and tells him, she sings a song to him saying that she'll wave her shawl until she becomes one with the wind. So I think it's an important song that not only is this a love song between a man and a woman, but it's also a song about commitment and undying love for truth and for love for their people. And I sang this song at Standing Rock recently for a benefit concert we did. And a young woman came up to me in tears and just said, "Thank you so much for singing this song," because so much of the Lakota language, has been taken from them. And it's a song that her grandmother used to sing to her, one of her fondest memories. And now she's relearning the language and teaching it now to her daughter. And this is one of the songs that she was teaching her daughter to remember the love for their people. And so I thought it would be an appropriate song for what we're speaking about, and as a prayer for the children that are coming to remember what our ancestors gave us with the love and commitment that they lived and died for. And so we're going to do Inside That. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a minute to rest in that. That was stunning. Thank you so much for that, for grounding us in music and song and in the language of the Lakota people, for bringing that into this space. That's so special. Thank you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, my name is Sari Heidenreich. I'm the regional coordinator for URI here in North America. And as you know, because you signed up to be on this call, we're here today to talk about a trip that some of us took to Standing Rock. It's about 2 weeks ago now. And we wanted to open the space to share stories in words. We've done it on paper, but we wanted to be able to have some more intimate conversations about them, and also to open a space for us to build some community together, and to think together and participate in conversation with one another about what all of this means for us in our individual work and in our communal work. And so what we're going to do today is those of us who are going to share some stories are going to introduce ourselves, and then we'll share some short stories, some snippets to paint a picture for those who weren't there of what we experienced at at Standing Rock at the Interfaith Day of Prayer specifically. And then we're so grateful to have with us Audri Scott-Williams, who is a member of the United Religions Initiative Global Council, as well as one of the organizers of the Global Indigenous Network. And she's going to share with us also about her time at Standing Rock several months ago. She kind of blazed the path for URI going to Standing Rock. She was the first among us that went. And so she's going to share about her experience and also about her work with Indigenous communities to broaden our awareness of the work that's happening within URI around supporting of Indigenous communities and Indigenous movements. And then once she's shared, we're going to have some time together, and we'll probably break out into breakout groups. We're able to do that with this platform, so smaller groups of people, so we can share together some thoughts and answers to questions that we have for us to share. So before we do introductions, I want to introduce Katherine, and she's going to share a bit about who she is, as well as who it was that went to Standing Rock 2 weekends ago and why we went. So Katherine, go ahead and introduce yourself and share.
Sure. Hi all. It's good to see all your faces and your representations in the little gray boxes on the screen. It's really exciting to be able to get to share about Standing Rock, but also I'm more excited to hear from all of you. So that's going to happen in a little bit after we tell our stories. My role at URI is I'm the environmental network coordinator. So I'm working with and supporting CC members globally who are engaged in environmental projects. So it's a pretty big task because no one's organized those before, but it's also really exciting because environmental work comes in all shapes and forms and is really not that exclusive. So it's a great way to be reaching out to people in CCs from all regions of the world. I want to just outline some of the reasons why we decided to go as a URI delegation. And I'm sure that other people who are on the delegation will have other things to add to that, but these are sort of the distilled points for at least myself. The first is that Chief Arvel Looking Horse, who's a member of Protecting and Restoring the Sacred, made a call for us to join him. He asked, we are asking the religious people to come and support our youth, to stand side by side with them because they are standing in prayer. It is time that all of us become leaders to help protect the sacred upon Mother Earth. She is a source of life and not a resource. In addition to that, I would say that going to Standing Rock was an opportunity for URI and for us as staff members and affiliates of URI to really uphold the PPPs that's the preamble, purpose, and principles of the URI. In a time when we as an Earth community are being called on to do so, especially in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters and loved ones. And I think that at this moment, Standing Rock and the issues that it brought to the surface were an opportunity for us to really question how, for instance, tribal rights and native sovereignty and historic marginalization and colonization and physical and cultural survival of the Native community are present in our work as URI staff people and within our network more generally. And I think that this is also an opportunity for URI, and particularly the few staff people that went, myself, Freddie, and Sari, to really reflect on how URI is dedicated to the Indigenous and environmental movements and how our work is becoming more movement oriented and really sort of like asking us to think about how we can encourage those movements and the momentum that we've been seeing to continue in the CCs in our regions. Another reason that we went, which is really wonderful and exciting, is to deliver over 1,000 prayers from CC members in 56 countries that were sent in. So after we announced that we were going to be sending a staff delegation to Standing Rock, we opened an email address called standingrock@uri.org, and all of us who were on the trip had the pleasure of reading all of those emails. Well, maybe not all of them, because it was a lot of them, but they were so beautiful just to see how many emails came in. And to me, it really showed that there was a clear desire from the URI community, first of all, to engage around this issue. And it just came to the surface that so many CC members all across the country and the world were tapped into what was happening at Standing Rock and were organizing on their own and had made trips on their own. So that was really one of the most powerful things to me. Finally, I would say that for myself and maybe for others, but I'm going to speak on my behalf, it was really a time to ground this trip was really a time to ground myself in my own identity in my work. As a white woman, going to land that I was invited to only for a day, and to really reflect on what it means to be an ally, both as a physical presence, and then also what it means to be an ally when I return to my work at URI and when I return to my community, and to reflect on how, in my identity, with my position as a URI staff person, as a person in San Francisco, as a woman, how I can most effectively mobilize my resources and my knowledge to continue to reflect on and act with Standing Rock in mind. So thank you all for that.
Thanks, Katherine. Really appreciate you giving us that context. And now, since it's a relatively small group of us, those of us who were on staff and trustees who went are going to introduce ourselves briefly, and then be warned, we're coming to you. Everyone else is going to get a chance to just briefly introduce yourself, to say your name and where you're calling from, and then, because we got to keep it short, if you can be thinking of one word that draws your heart to care about what is happening at Standing Rock, and then you can share that word with us. So, Freddie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Frederica Helmiere, and I serve as the regional coordinator for URI's Multiregion. And I was part of the delegation that went to Standing Rock. I was sort of wearing my Multiregion hat there, but as is always the case, we wear many hats when we go to many places. And I want to thank Katherine for so eloquently representing what we spent a fair bit of time talking about, which is the social location that we bring to spaces like this. So I was also in that space as a guest, as a white woman, as a person of privilege, as a person of European descent, and my one word, Sari, I always have a hard time with these. I like using lots of words. Solidarity. That's what brought me there.
Perfect. Thank you, Jaya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jaya Reinalter. I sit on URI's Global Council and therefore also take part in the Leadership Council of North America. I'm a participant in a cooperation circle of URI called Kashi. And one word, Freddie, you really nailed it, I think, in its simplest way, but I guess I would also say 2 words: sacred life.
I'll give you 2. Fred, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Fred Fielden. I am also on the Global Council for North America and part of the Leadership Council. I'm with the Interfaith Center at the Presidio, a longtime CC. Much has been said. I mean, I can't think of one word that really kind of sums up why, how, and what we did. Solidarity is probably the best word, so I think Freddie picked it.
We can all just keep reusing each other's words too. This is community. Audri, can you introduce yourself and the lovely person next to you?
Sure. I'm Audri Scott Williams. I'm a trustee with the United Religions Initiative. Next to me is Janet Windwalker, and she has been a part of URI for a very long time, and I'll let her speak for herself. But I was very honored to, over the years, to have been involved with the Global Indigenous First Initiative and now Network. And I had the privilege of going to Standing Rock with Chief Phil Lane, where we presented the flag, the URI flag there. But what I just want to say, the word for me was humble. I remember coming across the crest and just seeing the camp, and it literally took my breath away. The sun was setting on the camp, and it was quite beautiful. So immediately I was brought into a space of sacred humility.
Please, go ahead.
I'm Zaniti Unalei, which is Janet Jones Windwalker. My combined English and Cherokee name. Audri and I've been in several projects together long before I even knew I was part of URI. I'm currently the alternate chair of the Southeastern region with Tom Blue Wolf.
Thanks.
My comment, I guess, that I want to say now for this meeting and this time is that as an indigenous being of Cherokee tradition, I felt in watching and in supporting what's been happening at the North Dakota sites, and in hearing other URI members talk about their experience, in particular reading what Frederica had to say about her visit. I felt to the core of my being heard as a spirit for the first time in my lifetime. And it's the first time from a position of being in and around, yet isolated from spirit, in and around religious contexts, or what I call traditions or prescriptions for living. It's the first time that I felt heard as someone who self-identifies as being white, which we traditionally view as, from an indigenous worldview, as Western. And it reconnected us. And it does reconnect to universal identity and understanding of that that sense of being one in relationship with all of us. So I think that this is definitely what we'd call part of the Donalueda, or the day of coming, and we are the people we've been waiting for.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for those words. I'm just going to call on one last person to introduce themselves, and that's our Executive Director, Victor, who is here with us. Victor, can you introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. It's so good to be with you all. My name is Victor Kazanjian, and I have the great blessing of being part of URI and serving URI in this role as Executive Director, and to have journeyed on this particular journey regarding Standing Rock with Audri and with Phil, and then with the team that went for the Interfaith Day of Prayer. And so I'm just deeply filled and moved. And my word was, and picking up where Audri spoke, is radical humility. I think approaching this work with radical humility, particularly as a person of privilege, is crucial. It always has been, and my heart's joy and responsibility to feel that as I'm engaging the work of peace and justice and healing. So it's lovely to be with you all in this circle this morning.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you. And in order to speed up our introductions here, what I'm just going to ask is that each person say your name and where you're calling from, and then when we break into small groups later, we'll have a chance to share a little bit more. But Audri, could you just tell us your name and where you're calling in from?
Unmute. Okay, I'm Audri Turner. I'm from Fresno, California, Central Valley.
Thank you. Kandika, can you tell us where you're calling from? Oh, and maybe, all right, we'll come back to you. Rebecca, can you tell us where you're calling from?
Miami, Florida today.
Thanks. And Emily?
I'm Emily from Vancouver, Canada.
Thank you. Ahoan? Oh, hold on, you're muted. Try again.
I'm calling in from Cairo, Georgia.
Thank you. Alice?
I'm Alice from the Global Support Office of URI in San Francisco, and I apologize. The noise was in the hallway outside of my office, so thanks for muting my phone, Sarah.
You're welcome. This is a circle of forgiveness, so we're not hold it against you. I see only your initials, RCW. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, hi. I don't know quite how to change that, but my name's Ruth Wamsley, and I live in Burnaby, right next to Vancouver. Hi, Emily. Yeah, so.
There we go. Thank you. Reverend Joy?
Hi, I'm in San Jose, California.
Fantastic. And that is our cohort here today. Anyone else on the line that I missed?
Mamuna, did you get Mamuna?
You know what, I did not.
Hi, I'm here. I'm calling from Maryland.
Thank you. Fantastic. So the next portion we're going to move into here is just some time of storytelling, because I don't know about you guys, but I love stories and I think there's such power in them. And so we're going to, those of us who are at the Interfaith Day of Prayer are going to share what some of those experiences were like. And as Katherine gave the context to, we do want to honor the fact that most of us speaking identify as white, and we realize that we were guests of Chief Phil and of the Lakota people, and we try and speak these stories with humility and speaking only from our experience, but wanting to share, use this platform that we have to share those stories. So Frederica, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to share very briefly an experience that I had at Standing Rock. It was the very first thing that our whole delegation was able to experience together in the pre-dawn hours of Sunday, December the 4th, which was the official Interfaith Day of Prayer. But the day kicked off with a pre-dawn water blessing by some of the women elders in the space. And rather than sort of walk you through the whole experience, which I would love to do, I'm just going to paint a picture for you of one moment in this water blessing. We began at the sacred fire, and everyone had actually had an opportunity to drink a small Dixie cup of water that had been blessed. But the moment that I keep coming back to was after we had several hundred people migrated along the flag row towards the banks of the Cannonball River and made our way very carefully with the help of supportive hands and arms down the icy bank to a small icy hole that had been broken into the Cannonball River. And those who were participating in the ceremony were invited one by one to take a small pinch of sacred tobacco and simply place it into the water of the Cannonball River with a prayer. And this to me felt like a very holy and sacred moment. But I also recognize that for many people there, it wasn't really distinguished from the rest of the experience of the camp and the very camp itself, all of which is a holy place and a sacred moment. It was one big ceremony. It was one big prayer. And for me, this was a moment that was quite special and quite prayerful, but I also recognize that for many there, this the line between every day and a ritual is really blurred. And the final thing I just want to say about it was that we were really beseeched to pray, to really pray, to not just experience this moment and kind of take it in, but to send our sort of prayerful energies out into the world, because it became very clear to me that our prayers mattered. We were told to pray hard, and this was before we knew what was coming later on that day. And I really do believe that there were hundreds of people in that moment who were praying hard that the water would be protected, and it was a real honor to be a part of that experience.
Thank you, Freddie. I got chills when you were speaking there about that. I'm going to go next and share about the Interfaith Day of Prayer ceremony itself. And I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see a couple of pictures, because in addition to stories, the second best thing are pictures. But this is a panoramic photo of where we stood for several hours. As you can tell, it was cold. I don't know the exact temperature, but I can tell you I had 2 pairs of socks and 4 pairs of pants on. So that was the level of cold that it was. But we stood for hours in prayer together. We had all been invited, as has been mentioned, by Chief Looking Horse to be at this day of prayer. And he opened the day of prayer by reminding us that that's why we were there, by reminding us that people of all nations had been invited to come and pray as one. He reminded us that Miniwichoni, which was said over and over again at the camp, that water is life, and that was what we were here to pray for. The experience was very free-flowing. In my mind, as a Westerner, we have an agenda, and we follow it, and you get a certain number of minutes, and then that's your time, and you're done. And this was so beautifully free-flowing. People of faith were invited to stand up and form a line if they wanted to pray. And then one by one, people came up and shared. They shared songs and prayers. There was some drumming. It was just beautiful. As you saw the diversity, Victor, who's on this call, he presented sacred waters that had been collected by people in URI over the past 10 years from 167 different water sources, and he presented this to Chief Looking Horse along with a packet of prayers. I have, was our host, Chief Looking Horse. There's some photos here as well of just people of different traditions. This was Grandmother Mary Lyons who offered a prayer. This was Father Jacob from Old Order Catholic Church. They offered a Hindu prayer, but they identify with all the world's religions. This young man was a Quaker. And we all came together and we shared together in prayer for the sacred water. And we know now, as Freddie mentioned, what was to come later that day, but when we were praying, we had no idea what was to come later that day. And so it was a powerful moment of being together. And at the end of a couple of hours, my lower back was really hurting, and I was trying to find a place to stretch. And I'm thinking, I am a 20-somethings, woman who is kind of complaining about my back aching. And I looked around and I saw people of all ages standing together and thinking, what force was holding us up in the cold, on the hard ground, with the ice, and our feeble bodies to pray together for many hours. And I think there was a force there keeping us all upright and together. And I'm going to turn it over now to Jaya, who's going to share about some time she had after the day of prayer itself, or the ceremony itself around the fire.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay. So as Sari indicated, things were definitely free-flowing, and after the formal ceremony itself, it was really unclear exactly what was going to unfold, and we had been instructed that we'd be forming a gigantic circle around the entire perimeter of the camp itself, but it was really unclear as to how that was going to happen and how they were going to organize this many people into this giant circle. So at that point, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a journey that happened for myself and Victor as well, and how we got the news about the fact that the Army Corps was not permitting the easement. So after the ceremony, I took a little bit of a personal walk down to the river to have some time to absorb what had gone on, and coming back to the camp, ran into Victor and his family. And we all started to wander around together, just trying to get a sense for where we should flow into and where we should step into what the next steps were. And at that point, we ran into Cornel West, who, if anybody doesn't know who that is an American philosopher, political activist, public intellectual type. And he was with a cohort that were preparing to get a little bit of a tour of the camp and then head out to the road where, just to paint a little bit of a picture for you, the camp itself sits along the edge of a road, which then, if you follow the road, leads to the bridge where the formal front line and where all of the encounters we see played out on television take place. So when we ran into Cornel and his cohort, a gentleman who was dressed in Army gear, I believe he was one of the vets who were helping organize all of the vets that were coming into the camp that day, recognized Victor as clergy because he had on his neck collar, and invited Victor to join them because they needed the representation of clergy and whatever these next symbolic steps they were going to take were. So we went along with Cornel and his cohort and jumped into the back of a pickup truck, and I really didn't know what was going on at that point. I was just kind of along for the ride. And the next thing we know, we've been pulled up to the road, and we're getting escorted out of the road and through all of these private entrances where they're not allowing anyone else through. And at this point, I really don't know what's going on. And we arrive at the road, and looking to my left of the road, you can see that there are people lining up, and that there's a blockade in front of them, keeping them behind this. And it's becoming clear that they're preparing perhaps for a march or some sort of demonstration. And on the other side of the line where we're arriving are a number of press vehicles and cameras. And we get out of the vehicle and are surrounded by the cameras, and we realize that part of the efforts they were making in pulling Victor and us into their crew was to capture a moment of clergy and vets and activists on camera, and to really make theater out of this protest that was happening, and use, I guess you could say, like politics of publicity to really capture the optics of seeing clergy standing next to vets, standing next to these public intellectuals. And I think for me in that moment, it really highlighted the strategy and the mind that was going into coordinating these efforts, because it had been clear for the whole day how much heart was going into holding this sacred space. And in that moment, I really realized and captured the incredible strategy that was behind all of this. The last thing I'll say is the beautiful thing that happened in that moment as we're surrounded by cameras was one of the Sioux leaders came up to our group and privately announced to us that they had just received this tremendous news, that the easement was not passed, and essentially that they would not be making this walk down to the front lines, because really it was time for celebration and prayer. And that's where I'll end that story for now.
Thank you, Jaya, for that picture. You did an excellent job painting it for us. And I'm going to go next to Fred Fielding, another one of our trustees who is also a part of our delegation there. Fred, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. And just a little background, I do live in the Bay Area, and I'm very much like the rest of the URI delegation in terms of background. And that was, something I went into mindfully when we went to Standing Rock. And the other, for me, I think all of the experience I can share in most of those experiences in terms of the interfaith service and the water ceremony, and then the great prayer circle around the camp, which at some points kind of felt like a little bit of a snipe hunt, where people just kept saying, go out further. No, keep going. And then you're out in a parking lot somewhere on the edge of wherever with a group not connected to anybody. It was, it's a little haphazard, but it was still all in good spirit. I want to say that as being around the URI for a long time in various functions and participation levels, going as a trustee, I was very mindful that from my point of view, that this helps URI become relevant outside the kind of the interfaith communities that we work in. Weeks before we went, but Standing Rock was still very much in the social conscience of everybody. I was having a coffee with a friend of mine who sits on a board of a local cultural center. And I didn't know that till my son visited the cultural center for a school visit, and he was there. Well, we were talking, and I mentioned that I was in URI, and he goes, "You are?" He goes, "My two daughters were in that Christmas special because they're in a choir, but I knew nothing about URI. I just knew that the choir was asked to do this, filming, and we thought it would be an interesting experience, but he had no idea about URI at all." And I think taking actions the way we did by bringing a prayerful delegation with a very specific purpose in a way that holds up our values without getting in the weeds of the politics around it really is something that we need to continue to do when those opportunities arise. I'm kind of a big proponent that I really would like to see the URI star recognized just as well as the Red Cross or the Silhouette of Children for St. Jude's Hospital, whatever it is. People might not know that exactly what we do, but they know good is being done on some level. And I think that will help bring the cultures of peace that we're trying to achieve. But being at Standing Rock, it was very humbling to be received as guests and have a specific purpose. We did not stay around long after the announcement was made. We left before dark and did what we should, because it was very apparent that if you just showed up at the camp, you could plug in somewhere, but it would leave you kind of like in the kind of a floating space with no real purpose until you found your niche there. So us being there in a very specific way for a specific time really, I think, honored what they were trying to do at Standing Rock, and hopefully all of our intentions were received as intended.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. And I think that's a great segue into what we have planned next, which is to ask Audri to share. And Audri traveled to Standing Rock, as I mentioned, several months before the rest of us, and presented the URI flag to be flown along Flag Road, which leads into the camp. So I want to invite Audri to share about that experience as well as about her work, because as Fred says, being relevant is so key, and there have been folks within URI who've been doing work in indigenous communities for a long, long time, and we want to honor that. And so I just also want to make a note, we're about 10 minutes from the end of this call, and so we'll have Audri speak, and then for those who are able, we'll break out into breakout groups. So I'm available, and a few other of us are available to stay beyond the top of the hour. So just keep that in mind. We did promise you some participation, and so we'll deliver on that if you give us an extra few minutes. But Audri, why don't you go right ahead?
Okay. Sari, I was going to ask just I know that Mamuna has been online, and I know that on the call, and I know that she has an event that she is going to. Is there any way, if she's still on the call, just to have her express what she would like to express, and then I go after her?
Sure. Are you still there, Mamuna?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
America Divided. Is that the one you're speaking of, or which one?
I was just thinking of your time on Standing Rock, Mamona, at Standing Rock.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was asked by a sister Yonashtaha. I met her. I performed at Many Rivers to Cross, Harry Belafonte's event in Atlanta. And I've been hearing about what was going on, but I didn't really have a lot of specific details or any contact really on ground. But my mother and one of her friends, Mama Rabia, we had been working on trying to put something together in terms of sending supplies out there. And then I met Sister Yonashtaha at the Many Rivers to Cross, and she asked me, she said she's putting on a benefit concert for to raise funds for Standing Rock, and if I could come out there and perform. So, you know, when I got the invite, that's really kind of all I needed. Because I mean, I wanted to come out there, but I was also waiting for the right time and the right kind of invitation, you know, to know like how I would best serve a purpose. Like, you know, the brother was saying before me, that's, you know, it's very real to know what your role is within this whole movement, because everybody's role is not the same. And I think playing your part is so key in having and being effective and having things run smoothly. So I traveled out there. Actually, when I told my mother, I said, I'm going to go out to Standing Rock and perform. She said, well, you're not going without me. So my auntie came and my cousins came. And, you know, we flew ourselves out there. And so I think first coming out, I just wanted to just listen and find out exactly what was going on, because up until that point, I'd been getting kind of broken information. But I was just down for the cause. Like, I didn't really know everything that was happening, but I knew I was like, I'm here for it. So they took us around to, you know, we saw a Sitting Bull memorial, and we went throughout the camp. And I mean, it was just, it's the kind of place I would want to live. Like, if it were not like, you know, a war zone, like, I would want to live in a place like that where everyone from all over the world is represented, where there were, you know, camps, every kind of camp you could think of, you know, from different places in the world. And I thought what was dope is that it wasn't about race. It was really about like mindset, where people who felt like people were more important than profit were there. People who felt like they were ready to sacrifice everything for Mother Earth. They were really willing to sacrifice everything to make a point that human rights on this day will not be violated. And that kind of spirit was just alive and well. That, I mean, because it was freezing, and to see people that committed, this wasn't just, you know, we're marching in the streets on a nice sunny day, having a good time. This is pneumonia weather, and people are still out there laying their physical bodies in front of machinery. That's a kind of commitment and spirit that I don't think I had ever really seen before. And then just to know the history of Standing Rock Reservation of the Sioux people, I mean, I'll say from my tribe, my mom is Choctaw and Cherokee and Creek, and our tribe, we were farmers and not warriors. And a lot of our culture and tradition was wiped away with the Indian Removal Act and with all of the laws preventing us from continuing to practice the culture and speak the language. And so after 1976, when the Freedom of Religion Act was passed, my family had to go back to the Lakota to learn the ways again, because they were able to hold on to their culture longer than most of the Eastern tribes were. And so I have a certain and a special appreciation for them for just how much they fought. They've always been warriors, and how much of the culture that they were able to hold on to so much longer than a lot of the East Coast tribes. And not only that, I thought it was really amazing and beautiful just to see that the majority of like the day-to-day actions and the orchestration, the running of the entire, I call it a town, Ocheti Saka, when I call it a town, that's like the dopest town ever. But it was run by women. I thought that was really interesting. For whatever reason, I expected, you know, because of the hostility of the police, that maybe there were mostly men there. And I mean, everyone that I was basically in contact with that was running the show, they were all women. And there were even children there. There was like a homeschool, one of the yurts was where the kids were going to homeschool. And then there was like the arts tent and the different kitchens, and the horse ranches were over there. I got to ride a horse, and I mean, the healing tent, and then the medics tent, and the massage. And it was like every kind of like whole body healing, every kind of person represented, just this beauty where, you know, a lot of these people, you know, I've never met them from all different walks of life. And when you walk past and people just smile at you and just give you this, like, right on, like, we're going to win this thing. It was just a sense of pride, and just the human spirit was just so alive and well, and felt empowered. It felt like we can win this. We're not defeated. We can win this. And that was absolutely overwhelming for me. And when I actually got to perform at the actual concert, just seeing so many like Native artists and who, you know, and being in the music business a long time, and knowing how things run in the music business, and how much indigenous artists are not really able to their voices are not represented in the mainstream at all, or even rarely even in the underground indie scene. And so to see so many just really incredible indigenous artists speaking their truth and telling their story using the medium of hip hop, which has always been the genre of rebellion all over the world. I've gone everywhere and I've seen all these communities use hip hop to really tell their own story. And in America, you don't hear the story of indigenous people, but it's there. And so to hear all these young, like the Red Warrior Camp, who were like the front liners, you know, tell their story and rhyme, and that was so much unity that I, you know, had the privilege really of experiencing. And then when it came our time to perform, I was telling my mom, I was like, you know, I had all these different set lists in my mind because, again, I do this professionally full time, and you know, sometimes being in Hollywood and different things, you may have the tendency, you know, I'm a performer and I'm an entertainer, but then the root of what I do is really healing work, you know, but I have to morph into many different arenas, you know, working within Hollywood. And so I said, Ma, I'm trying to figure, I don't know what to do, what I should sing. I keep going, you know, creating different set lists in my mind. I can't figure out what I should give them. She said, fill in the void, sing. We need a healing. Because at the end of the day, you know, I'm seeing people coming in who haven't had fasts in weeks, you know, who it's hard to get proper nutrition there. You know, people who are probably dehydrated and who are tired, who just got out of jail. It's real, you know, and nothing. They need the spirit to be inspired. Because if the spirit inspired, there's nothing that you can't do. So there needs to be a rejuvenation for people who've been here months in and out, you know, living in conditions that are not really, they're not the best in terms of having running water, ample. You can't just go to the grocery store and get what you want, you know, different things like that. So they've really been living off the land. For a lot of people, they have not been used to living off the land, but they are committed to staying there. So we did the song that I sang when we opened, and a few other songs, and really just connect. My mom was right. She just said use the sound to connect with the people and fill them up so that they can restore and rejuvenate themselves to start again, to tomorrow wake up and fight another day. You know, you always hear Native people say it's a good day to die, and not to be morbid, but just understanding the cycle of life that we never die anyway, but really walking into the day with whatever comes out of this, I'm good with it. As long as I know that I've lived in a way that's honorable and that honors my ancestors, and I've done the righteous thing. I stood up for Mother Earth with my last breath, and that was a good breath. That I'm happy with having that has been my last breath, and that's the spirit of Native people. You know, there's never been this fear of life or death, or this needing to hoard anything. Like Native people always give away everything every year to make sure that we're not attached to anything of this physical realm, because it's so temporary and it's not even real. You know, like God gives it to us to enjoy, but it's not even ours to keep, you know. So that was my experience at Standing Rock.
Thank you. Thank you. You're an adept storyteller. You painted such a picture. for
Yes.
us. So
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Go ahead,
Mamoni.
Audrey.
Okay, I
Thank
just
you,
wanted
Audrey.
oh yes, I love you, baby. I just wanted to honor, first of all those that have come before us, not by name, but by the spirit of the energy of the indigenous role that has been a part of URI from its very formative stage to the times that that energy was held in such a sacred bundle by the Latin American CCs, Alejandrino and Raul and Fanny and so Sophia and so many and Yolanda Trevino actually began bringing the indigenous spirit into URI, not only in the conversations, and Chief Phil Lane, not only in the conversations, but actually in doing ceremony to open meetings and to close meetings, so that we were always holding the vision that we were coming in a sacred, holy way, and that we were doing the work for generations to come. So I wanted to honor that. That goes back to, I think, about 1996. Rebecca probably has a better sense of the timing, but I'm thinking 96. I know 97 is when ceremony started. I'm going to fast forward to 2014, which was the culmination of our years as the Global Indigenous Initiative, where 33 traditional elders and youth came together up in the mountains outside of Napa Valley at, I think it was Four Winds. And it was a very close to the earth kind of environment. And so we had a lot of exercise, and it was good because we were on the earth. We sat under a great vineyard. I remember the first day, and we prayed together, and Chief Phil and Grandmother Mona Palaka asked the group to introduce themselves. Well, we started at 9 that morning. I think we ended about 9 o'clock that night, because one of the things that we all committed to is that before we left the circle, we would know each other. That was a very important. So by the end of the evening, the entire circle inside was filled with different altars from many of the people who spoke, ranging from Latin America to Altai in Siberia, to the Philippines, to Hawaii, to Ghana, Senegal, and beyond. So it was amazing opportunity to be together in the spirit of our human family. But I wanted to just say that I wanted to really anchor that our presence has been so important in the development of URI. I also wanted to note that there were 6 action areas, actually 7, that came out of that gathering, where the elders committed and the young people that this is where we need to focus our attention. And number 5 is stopping the assault on Mother Earth by extractive industries that are destroying the waters and causing egregious imbalance to the natural environment. And so as we went to Standing Rock, Chief Phil and I, and just my vision was to have no vision, to have no expectation, but to allow myself to arrive. And so, as I mentioned, in the arriving there on the sacred ground, I literally felt like it just pulled to my knees, that kind of energy of humility and sacredness of what was happening. I don't need to say what was happening, because so many of you have touched on that. But what I did want to express is I spent a lot of my time just going to people and just allowing the space between us to be filled with our own desire to share with one another. And there was not one person that I met that didn't want to help, want to satisfy some need that you might have, want you to have a plate of food, even if you weren't hungry, but then just be so honored that you would even take a bite of what was offered. And so we saw that in ceremony, we saw that literally in the food, and in just that sense of wanting to be a part of something together that could transform so much of what we hear. And what I walked away with was that, our indigenous people have been holding space. I was at an indigenous gathering last year around this time in Hawaii. And one of the elders there, or one of the chiefs from the Yawanawan tribe in the Amazon, I asked him, I said, what are the elders saying about this time that we're in? There's so much going on. And he says, we have to hold to our prayers and we have to wait now. And I didn't understand. I mean, I was kind of taken back because I felt, well, this is a time of action and engagement. But he says, in their tradition, this is the time that we hold to the prayers and we wait. And so when I was standing there in Standing Rock, I got a sense of understanding what he was saying, that it's time for us to wait, to hold the prayers, to allow that space, I think both Fred and Mamuna mentioned, to open up, that then directs us in our action. And so being a part of URI at this time when so much was invested in us being a part of what was happening and the allowing energy to allow it to unfold just as it needed to was, I honor that. I honor that. And so what I really wanted to do was just to connect the fact how important the indigenous role has been from the very beginning. Going forward, I want to just say that I think what Standing Rock does is it opens the spirit of so many of us who have felt disempowered during this time, who didn't know really where to apply our energy. Started with 20 people, grandmothers who just wanted to protect the water. And so now I think we are all empowered and we're all invited to the space as we look around us at the many different things. The indigenous action areas being creating sacred gardens to preserve and protect plant life and healing herbs that have been central to indigenous communities. Mamuna mentioned the arts, how important it is to have the arts of the indigenous people become a part of the whole rather than a collection here and there with pieces that have been taken. So preserving sacred sites and retrieving heirloom sacred objects dispersed throughout the world. All of these are parts of things that make us whole again. And as the indigenous communities are now standing up to become whole, then we all get to stand with them and be a part of this prophesied moment. That's what the elders kept saying. We're in the midst of the prophecy. This is it. And so here we are in the midst of the prophecy, working in URI to create a path forward of peace and justice and doing what's right for the earth and all living people, regardless of how we've come together, what path we've used, honoring those paths rather than saying we all have to be one, but honoring each of our paths. This is the moment that, from my experience working with the indigenous communities, working with and embracing my own indigenous, this is the moment. And so Standing Rock now has given us permission to look beyond this moment into the future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audri. Thank you. I could have not asked for a more articulate way of sharing the power of the Global Indigenous Initiative in bringing us to this place, and also in segueing us into our participatory time. And I know we've gone over and we're just going with the flow of things. So for those who can stay, I want to give us some time to kind of respond to what Audri led us into, which is this question of Standing Rock has opened this door. What's next? What's next for you as an individual? What's next for your community? What's next for URI?